have adapted some of the first aid principles to helping out somebody in a divorce. So the first thing you do when you find somebody in a medical issue is you would check for vitals, right? You're gonna, just like you need to know what you're dealing with when a friend or family member is going through something like this. You want to know where they are in the situation. Where are they? Have they done counseling? Have they discussed divorce with the spouse, or is this something that they're just starting to think about? And you really can try to jump in at that point if it hasn't gone too far and really encourage them to get counseling. When the marriage is at a breaking point, encourage them to get with a Christian counselor. From what I've seen, if you can get people to the bedrock, if you can get them back down to the Bible, they have a better chance of making it, because once you get it down, if they're both believers, and if nobody's stepped out on the other in the marriage, and if it's just something that they're, it's just breaking down, but it hasn't gotten to where they're broken, a Christian counselor can get them to the Bible and say, break it down to, this is what a good husband will do. This is what a good wife must do. And, like I said, God hates divorce. So you can build it up from there. And sometimes the best opportunity they have is if they go to their pastor or go to a Christian counselor, they can build it back up from there. A lot of times regular counselors that aren't believers or that aren't based on Christian methods, I guess, I don't see much success at that. A lot of people come in and say that they've been to counseling and it didn't work, and they're tired of working through workbooks, and they're tired of doing things. The other spouse wouldn't listen, and the other spouse didn't do what they were supposed to do. So it really, their best chance, if you can get your family member, if you can get your friend to a Christian counselor, or if they do go to church together, get them to their pastor, their preacher. That, I think, is the best opportunity to save it. So you want to check and see if there is a pulse in that marriage still, if there's any way to save it. You can encourage them and tell them that, the grass is rarely greener. If they're thinking that there's going to be something better on the other side, that's rarely the case. I mean, there is great life on the other side, but everything about divorce is awful. It's awful to each party. It's awful to the kids. It's awful to your friends. It's awful to their family. It's multi-generational. So it's not something to wade into lightly. If it's something that somebody's just starting to think about, try to get them to shake them out of it if you can. So, check for vitals. The next step that you want to do, if as you're talking to them, you want to stabilize them, right? They're going to be very emotional, and you don't want them to do anything silly. A lot of things go through their head. A lot of things, people handle things in different ways. But they're going to have to go through all 5 stages of grief. You have denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And everyone goes through all those phases of grief. It's often said that going through a divorce is much like the death of a close spouse. I don't agree with that. I think death is a natural end. We all know that it's going to happen. You just don't know when or how. But I think people can come to acceptance from a death much easier than they can from a divorce. Because divorce is an unnatural end. Nobody gets married expecting to become divorced. And when you divorce, there is still this person there. They're not gone. They're very much there, and they're fighting for your kids. They're fighting for your things. They're costing you money. And it's much tougher for that person that's going through all that to process that. It's not totally over like with the death. It's still ongoing. And this person that once held the closest spot in their heart is now, coming at them with everything they've got many times. And it's extremely violative. And people have a hard time processing it. And I deal with that on a daily basis. I see people that come in very upset about it. Then a lot of times I get to see them when they get very angry about it. And when you're watching this with a family member, if you're watching this with a friend, please understand that that they're having to process this. It's not as easy as all, it's going to be all right. Kids are going to be all right. They're tough. You're going to be good. Give them a pat on the back. You need to be talking with them, getting them through it, making sure that they really are okay. In some of my cases over the years, I've had a lot of crazy things happen. I've had people that have committed suicide. I've had people that have attempted to commit homicide and then commit suicide. I've had people that have kidnapped the kids and taken off. I've had people throwing the other spouse's belongings in the street and throwing stuff out in the yard. I've had people running up and down the neighborhood, yelling and screaming, calling the cops. Sometimes people sell the property of the other person. They break something that they like. I had a lady in another county, fairly rich couple. They both drove Porsches, and she decided when she got home she was going to drive her Porsche into the back end of his Porsche and push his Porsche all the way up against the house. Then she got out, and he had a custom motorcycle. She knocked it over against his Porsche and scratched it and knocked it, broke the motorcycle up a little bit. And then she went inside, and this particular guy was in the pharmaceutical world, and he had a bunch of samples that he had collected from doctors, and he used to illegally maybe sell them out of his store, whatever. But anyway, she took them and dumped them all over his favorite recliner, then sprayed mace, of all things, on his leather recliner. What mace does, or pepper spray, it melts it was a red, I got a picture of it. It was a red recliner. And after she sprayed it, it just made it just ooze and all just discolored it. Then she took a note, she wrote out a note. She said, what are you going to do? Call the police? Call the ATF? Call the pharmacy board? Ha! And she took a knife and she stabbed it into his recliner. He didn't call anybody. He knew that what he was doing was illegal. And it got settled pretty soon thereafter. But people do crazy things. So you got to watch your friend. And this person, you would never have, I would never would have dreamed that she was going to do that. So you got to kind of watch your friends. Because all kinds of things are going through their head. Make sure that they don't do something that really affects them in a negative way or hurts somebody. Okay, so your friend or your family member has gotten to the point that they have decided that maybe somebody has been having an affair, maybe something's going on, and they are going to have to go through this process that they really don't want to go through. But it's kind of to that point. Make sure that they understand they need to go to a good lawyer, not just a lawyer that does a little bit of everything. They need to go to somebody that focuses on that area of the law. And they need to get somebody that's from that county that they're living in, because divorce law is the judges to do anything that they think is fair under the circumstances in their discretion, using their discretion. So that means it's anything. The judge can do anything they want. There is no more powerful judge in Alabama than a divorce judge, because like regular circuit court judges that hear big money trials or hear murder cases, they sit there and they rule on the law, and it's black letter law. It's written out for them what they can and can't do, and the jury is a decider of fact, so the jury is deciding things for them. The judge in a divorce decides who's telling the truth, decides what's fair. But the good thing is, if you've got a judge in a county that's been there for a while, judges are very much human, of course, and they don't reinvent the wheel. And as long as you get in there with somebody, if your lawyer has been doing it for a while and knows that judge, they're going to do the same thing. They've had this case, they've had the same case that your client's got or that your friend's got a dozen times or 20 times or 30 times. They don't reinvent the wheel. They're going to do the same thing with a certain set of facts every time. They've got the same cases they've already done. It's just different faces that come in and out. So with certain scenarios, they've got to know, what the judge is going to do. If you don't, I call people, some lawyers are cheerleaders. They want to fight. You go in there and say, I want this. Yeah, let's go. I'll fight for you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Well, The judge is never going to do that. So you need a lawyer that's not just a cheerleader. You need a lawyer that's a lawyer that's going to advise you, not just say, yeah, we'll fight for it. Because it is true that law allows for a lot of things to happen, but sometimes as long as you know the judge isn't going to do it, you can avoid a lot of expense, a lot of wasted time, a lot of heartache. If you know what you can go for and what you shouldn't go for, it saves you a lot of time. So encourage them to do a little research, maybe help research, ask around. Word of mouth is still the best way to find out about the lawyer to help them out. So, find out who would be the go-to in that county, who does a lot of it, and try to get them to that person. It may not be the cheapest person, but it will end up saving them money usually in the end. So make sure that you're willing and able to help them out doing that. Also, if your friend or family member is in that position, okay, it's starting up, here we go, they're going to go to the lawyer, it's about to happen. Well, everybody, when a divorce happens, all their friends know about it. All their family knows about it. Their whole church knows about it. All their coworkers know about it. It's not something that is private. Everybody's going to be talking about it, or at least they think everybody's talking about it, and usually they are. And that person is going to be inundated with friends and family calling them and asking what's going on. Where are you? What happened today? I tell my clients, and you need to tell your friend or family member, find one or two people that you truly trust and that you want to lean on for advice. You don't need 15 people giving you their opinion, because they're going to do it. And that's going to do nothing but confuse them, and it's going to do nothing to help them, and it's also extremely emotionally draining. If they're telling and updating 15 people a day, telling them all the details of what's happening today, what's going on next, and what the lawyer said or what the judge said every day, it gets extremely emotionally taxing. So I tell my clients, find one or two people, and once you found those one or two, lean on them, pour into them, listen to them. And then everybody else that calls, have some kind of pat answer, standard answer to give them. Oh, I'm doing great, everybody's great, the kids are great, I've got a good lawyer, everything's happening fine, it's just proceeding just the way it is, I'm fine. And they're okay with that. They're usually, kind of, if they were really concerned about you, it gives them enough information to know that you are okay for the moment, everything's good, but you're not having to give them all the details. So encourage your person to do that. And if you happen to be one of those one or two very trusted people that they're going to lean on, encourage them to get professional help, not just a lawyer. They're going to need, a lot of times, counseling. They're going to need private investigators sometimes. They're going to need accountants to help them sometimes. So if you're one of those close confidants that they're going to lean on, one of those counselors they're going to lean on, make sure that you help them get to the right people. Again, ask around, find out who that right person is. And another thing that becomes very important, especially if it's your family, divorces are very expensive. And a lot of times people make bad decisions about the professional help they get when they need it the most. This is their one time, this is their one opportunity to reap the investment that they poured into this relationship for however many years. And they don't need to get with the wrong person and not capitalize on what they should get. It's not that people come in and say, I want to fight, I want to get everything I can get, and I want to do this and do that. Then other people come in and say, I just want to be fair, I just want to get this over with, I don't want, and I tell them, the value, what you're going to get, at least from a judge, if we happen to be in front of the judge, is exactly the same, no matter whether you're wanting to take them to the cleaners or whether you're wanting to just be fair, because you're going to get the same thing. I mean, it's just the process of getting there, how much dust you're going to kick up, how much dirt you're going to kick up, how much money you're going to spend. So it's try to keep them with good people, and especially if it's a family member, be ready. They might need some money. They might need a loan for a while. Most people that come to me, It's a very bad time in their life. Everything's already kind of started happening. And a lot of times money is a big issue. Money is a big stressor for couples anyway. And when they get to me and it's that time and it's, here we go, they don't have the money. And they say, well, a lot of guys say, well, it's just cheaper to keep her. A lot of times it might be. But if it's to that point, if somebody's having an affair, if they're doing whatever, and they need it, you might need to consider giving them a short-term loan, helping them out, because in order to get the help they need, they're going to have access to funds. Now, once the case gets going, and this, again, I want to tell you a little bit about the process so that when you have a friend or family member going through it, you can kind of understand what phase they're in. In Alabama, there's two ways to become divorced. One is uncontested divorce, and the other is contested. Well, an uncontested divorce is where the parties get together and they agree on how they're going to divide everything. They can agree on how they're going to handle custody and the kids, and they agree on how they're going to divide up debt, and that's great. If they can do that, that's the quickest, least expensive, fastest way to do it. But a lot of times it's just not that easy. With kids, that's very hard sometimes for them to decide how they want to handle that. It's very hard. Both parties want certain things. And so sometimes people are angry and they're not able to sit down and maturely go through and say, all right, if you'll do this, I can do that, and we'll just split it this way. So if they can't do it as an uncontested, then it's a contested divorce. And the way a contested divorce happens in Alabama is you file a complaint for divorce. And it doesn't spell out all these specifics that you want the big screen TV and the car and all that. It just simply puts the matter before the court. You do state a ground in there. Most of the time it's incompatibility that you originally put in the complaint. But if there's been adultery or whatever, you can sometimes say that you're going to reserve the right to go in and amend it and add that later. Simply because it is a public document and sometimes you don't want everybody to be able to know everything about it. Plus, it gives the person that's filing, if that is going on, it gives you a little bit of a bargaining chip if you don't put it in originally. Because then, if they'll go along with you and if you'll work with you, then maybe you won't have to get into that. So it kind of gives you a bargaining chip. But once the complaint is filed, you have to serve the other party. They have 30 days to file an answer. Usually they'll file a counterclaim, kind of saying the same thing back. Then you enter a phase in the divorce called discovery. Well, discovery is where both sides are finding out, discovering the facts. Now that's more than just maybe who's cheating on who or what, but it's how much money do they make? What debt do they have? What's the source of the debt? What other assets do they have? What land, what houses, what condos, whatever do they have? And because you're going to have this information ultimately for a judge if you ever get in front of a judge, but both sides need to know what everybody's got and what you're dealing with. Mainly the lawyers need to know that. There's interrogatories, which are written questions that are asked that have to be answered within 30 days and they're under oath. There's request for production of documents, which is seeking tax returns and credit card bills and phone bills and whatever documents you might need. And also you're asking for any exhibits that the other side might be using in a trial if you ever got there. Simply to find out everything that everybody's going to have against the other, or find out what you've got, so that then once everybody knows what we're dealing with, then in Alabama we're now a mandatory mediation state. So if either party wants to go to mediation, or if a judge on their own motions asks you to go to mediation, you've got to go to mediation to try to work out your case. Now, mediation is a process of alternative dispute resolution, which simply means that you go to someone that's trained to help you customize a settlement. The parties are in different rooms, they don't see each other. The mediator goes between the rooms trying to work out the deal. And it's not just simply carrying the offer back and forth. I'm a mediator, I'm one of the 5 or 6 mediators in town. But a good mediator helps you get creative. A good mediator can kind of read the mood in each room and really see what is vital to them versus what they just kind of want. And it has a way of getting everybody to their breaking point or to their maximum point of bending, and then they settle. They say that the goal of every mediation is that both of them walk away equally unhappy, but happy to be done. And I guess that's true. Nobody goes out of a mediation high five and, ooh, I got him, I won. It kind of makes both of them give to the point that they've had it. But they are glad to get it done, because if you get it resolved in mediation, you don't have court. You don't have to go in front of a judge. You don't have witnesses being called. You don't usually do depositions before mediation. So there's a lot of expense that you're cutting off by getting it done by agreement, and it's just a lot less emotionally taxing. So be thinking about that if you have a family member or friend going through this. Make sure that they know that that's an option. It's going to happen. Our judges have a standard order now. You've got to mediate before you can go to trial. So most of our cases, I'd say over 90% of our cases now, get done in mediation. That's saved them probably 6 months of time too. So it's good. So make sure that your friend is getting to the point, you know, they're processing things, they're getting it clear in their head that this is going to happen, and help them get toward the acceptance of everything being there. People don't settle, they don't get it over until they're ready to get it over. So timing is a big thing. You can go to mediation too soon, and if people are still we call it too hot. If the people are still too hot, they're never going to be able to give in and resolve something. So timing is important for all of that. Now, again, why are we talking about this in Sunday school? Well, because it's here, you know. It's in our churches, it's in our community, it's in our families. If you haven't gone through it or had somebody close to you go through it, you know, you're probably in the minority. And a lot of people that haven't been through it just don't know all of this is happening. They don't know the process. They don't know. And I think that it's something that we as a church need to be ready to step up and go to our brother or sister and help them out. So my goal, of course, today is to increase your knowledge of it, if you didn't have any knowledge of it, and to make you more aware of what these people might be going through. Now, if we get to the point where, all right, mediation didn't work, and they can't get it worked out themselves, well, then they're looking at going to a trial. You might be a person that's called as a witness for your friend or your family member. If it's a custody case, they're going to need some family member or some friend that has witnessed this parent parenting the child a lot. You know, if you've been around a lot, you would be a good person to call, because you can talk about how this person is a good parent, good father, good mother, how they are attentive to the child's needs. There's a great bond there. They love each other. Of course, family, when you bring a family member in as a witness, they're in the tank. You know, the judge is like, well, of course, the mother's going to say that for her son. Of course, the aunt's going to say that for her nephew. So it's good to get people, I try to get people from schools, get people from the neighborhood, get people from the church that they go to. Judges like hearing from those people, especially teachers and principals and things like that, because they don't want to be there. They had to get a subpoena to be there. They'd rather be at work doing their regular job. So when they're called, and whatever they say is probably going to be the truth, they didn't want to be there, but they're going to tell the truth and be done. A lot of people go into court and they say things that aren't necessarily the truth. They say things that they think no one can prove differently. And I've said for a long time, you'll hear more truth on the street than you do a courtroom. And that's very unfortunate. If you have a friend or family member in this situation and they're about to go in court, tell them don't lie, tell the truth. We've got a certain judge here in town that if he hears two sides of the story and they're vastly different, he puts them on notice of perjury. And he tells them, he is, in one case recently, he has called a deputy in and threatened to incarcerate one of them for perjury and bring charges against them for perjury, which is a felony. So, you know, I've got a client right now who is telling me that she's going to say a certain thing, and I know it's not the truth, and I've told her my rules of ethics, our Alabama's ethical rules say that a lawyer can't have a client knowingly tell a lie on the stand and still represent them. So I've already told her, if you're going to say that, I'm out. I've got to be out. I know that that is not the truth. And if you go in there saying that, well, nobody knows that, but you and me, I can't let you say that. So people sometimes think, and you'll see some people when they're on the stand or in a deposition, they process just for a second, could anybody know the actual truth about this? And then they're going to only tell you what they think you could have no other way of knowing, and it's the best in the best light for them. And that's just you don't put your hand on a Bible when you go to court. You do swear, and we do, so help me God. But I've seen it just in I'm in my 30th year of practice. I've seen it change over the time. You can just see people, the truth's not in them, and they just don't have as much of a concern about just flat out lying when they go to court. So don't let your person be that person. Encourage them to absolutely tell the truth. They can deal with the truth. It may not be great, but actions have consequences. They just need to own up to it and go forward, as it is a lot better than especially getting caught for it. When your person is nearing the end of the case, and if they're trying to come up with a way to get their case resolved, people sometimes settle for a lot less than a judge would give them out of guilt. If they've done something wrong, there's a certain period of time where people will feel guilty about what they've done, and they might go ahead and give you, more than what you can get from a court. That's usually early on. When someone has been cheating, there's a small window of time that they may build the guilt, from what I've seen anyway. After that, I guess it's human nature. They come up with some way of processing it and justifying it. And even though they're the ones that red-handed, got caught, hotel or whatever, about a week later, it was your fault. You made me do that. They process it where they weren't getting what they needed from the marriage, and it caused them to go do what they did. And now there's no remorse in it, and they're back to fighting you just as hard as they would have if you'd have been the one cheating or whatever. So that's a little window that if your friend or family member, especially early on, is hearing from the other side, oh, I'm so sorry, don't do this, well, if you're going to do it here, just take the house, take this, do that, jump on it. If you're helping that person, there's a small window, and it's going to close, and then it's gone. Another thing that can actually promote cases getting over with in a way that you want them to get over with, if you're on the good side or whatever, pride. If a person is on the other side is very prideful, they consider themselves a pillar of the community. If they don't have a bad reputation in the community yet, you know something about them, or they have been caught doing something that would absolutely change their reputation. That gives you a window of opportunity there before it is known or before it's out there to maybe get them to come to your side of the table and say, okay, if you'll do this, then we can do that and be done. Some settlement agreements actually have non-disclosure agreements in it, saying that if, based on this settlement, if you'll do this for me, we're going to seal this and not let it be known what they did. We're not going to tell the world what they did. Sometimes that can help your person out. So that's something to consider. Another thing that promotes people to getting cases resolved earlier than later is if there's something that's tremendously embarrassing about something. It might have a video. I've had a case where very early on, quick. There was an older man, had an affair earlier in his life, and then married the person that he had the affair with. She was about half his age. Well, she got very suspicious that he was having an affair on her. And this was when we first had those camcorders that were the big cameras that were on your shoulder. So the private eye goes down there, and it's a farmhouse in another county, and we made a plan for my lady to go out of town so that, if you give him a little lead time, if he's up to something, he's not going to be able to resist. So we'll put a private eye on him. Let's see what we find out. So my private eye goes down there, happens to be a lady, and she sneaks up to the house, and she's filming, because as soon as my client left, it wasn't 5 minutes, her best friend pulls into the garage door goes down. We get all that on video. Then she starts going around the house, and right as it's getting dark, she's able to get some things on video that are very embarrassing. So that was on a Saturday. Friday, she calls me Monday, the private eye calls me Monday, tells me what we've got, gets me the tape. I know who the lawyer is on the other side, called him and said, hey, I need y'all to come up and talk to me for a little while. Let's see if we can have a settlement conference early on in this. And it had been, the case was very new, a couple of weeks old maybe. And put them in my conference room with the TV and a VCR, played it, and sure enough, I left them in there. I said, y'all need to watch this first. And so they watched what they watched, and then the lawyer came out, and he was mad, kind of. He said, wasn't him. I said, what do you mean it wasn't him? It was him. It's his house. You could see him. It's him. He says it wasn't him. I said, we got the tape. I'm good. I think we're good with it. And he said, what do y'all want? And I told him what we wanted. We got to settle that day. But that's where, if that person hadn't been willing to invest in the private investigator, cost her a little bit of money that day, but it got the case over with early. It got the case over with the way that she wanted it. So encourage your people to get the right help. And if you can get that, great piece of evidence of something that's going on, the threat of embarrassment or the threat of exposure can sometimes make somebody come to the table a lot sooner and save them a lot of heartache. When your friend or your family member is going through this, understand that peace of mind has a value. And it is worth more to some people than it is to others. But if they're telling you that they're agreeing to a certain thing and that they're ready to be done, understand where they were coming from. Probably, if it sounds like they're giving up on a lot or not getting everything you think they ought to get, understand the pressure of going through that. Sometimes just they'll cave a little bit and say, I just want it over. I'm fine with this. I know I might be able to get a little more, but I just need to be done. So be accepting of them saying that they've got to be done, because peace of mind has a different value to everyone, and they might just have to have it done. So, encourage them, be with them, don't second guess them or make them doubt, I guess, because they need that. Talked a little bit about, if we can't get it settled, where does it go? Can't get it mediated, where does it go? Will it go to trial? Might be called as a witness. But let me kind of talk about the process of trial so that you'll understand if you hear your friend or family member say, I've got my trial coming up. There are hearings that happen before the final trial. So you might hear them going to court, I thought y'all already been to court. Well, that was a temporary hearing, a PDL hearing. You got to get that puts a Band-Aid on the case until you can get the case over with. Then you may have emergency hearings if something comes up. You may have contempt hearings if somebody's violating a temporary order. But then you have one final hearing. It's just the judge in there, the court reporter, the two lawyers, the two parties in the room. It's a fairly small room, about the size of something like this. the witnesses, other witnesses have to sit in the hall. They can't be in there listening to what's going on. They have to sit in the hall, and they come in just for their part, and then they leave, trying to make sure that they don't feed off of somebody else's testimony or alter their testimony based on what they've already heard. So that process is completed after both parties have called all their witnesses, and then the judge rarely rules from the bench. Usually they leave that day, and they'll get an order maybe in a week or two. So you'll hear about your friend, well, how'd your trial go? You know what the judge did? Well, they didn't rule. Well, that's normal. They're not going to rule that day. They're going to take it under advisement. They're going to issue a written order later. And when it comes out, pretty much stuck with it. Things from a trial can be reversed on appeal. An appeal process is something you go to Montgomery, you don't go to Montgomery, you mail your stuff to Montgomery, but it's in an appellate court, Court of Civil Appeals, and then the Supreme Court. That doesn't help in civil appeals. But the standard on appeal is, did the judge abuse his discretion or her discretion? Well, that's a high standard. I mean, they give a lot of leeway to the judge having heard the witnesses. They give a lot of leeway to the judge having watched the witnesses and what their demeanor was on the stand. So you're pretty much stuck with whatever that judge does, because they're not going to be reversed on appeal, and it's not going to change. And 30 days after a final order is issued, the judge doesn't have jurisdiction to go back and do anything else about alimony if you didn't get alimony, or about any property issues. Kid issues, children's issues, custody, visitation, child support are modifiable. That can continue to be modified years later, months later, whatever it is. Anytime there's been a material change in circumstances, they can go back in, and so if something happens with a child, or something happens with a parent, that's a big deal. Or somebody loses a job, or they get a better job, much better job, there can be adjustments. You might hear your friend going back into court for different things. And that's what that is. So anyway, we as Christians are going to have this either in our lives or in our family or in our friends. The church definitely has it here. It happens. It happens everywhere. So I hope that what I've been able to tell you today has given you a little insight into what the process is that they're going through. And I hope it wasn't just a total waste of y'all's time to sit here and listen to me drone on. But I think that we as Christians are called to help, and I hope that this has been helpful to you. Thank you. Any questions real quick? Anybody?
Is there a follow-up on the lesson maybe one day about what we can do to help those who have gone through the divorce, to keep them on solid ground and not lose their hope?
I can do that. I'd be willing to do that. But I haven't got anything prepared today for something like that. But yes, I mean, really, after they've gone through it, usually it takes a year to create new habits, new routines. Families, but they've always done Christmas a certain way. They've always done each holiday a certain way. You've got to go through all that one time to kind of get a new tradition. And so that first year can be really rough on them. Usually after a year, I usually see people getting a lot better. I get a lot less phone calls about things. They're used to how the routine works. They're used to how the visitation schedule works. And they've established those new traditions. So, and usually also they've kind of moved on. They're dating new people. They're seeing new things, and their world is kind of settled, come to be a lot more peaceful. So I don't see it usually that they have that much more trouble after the fact. But I can try to notice. Any other questions about anything?
I think what she's saying is what we need is what we, as Christians, after they're on the other side, what can we do to hold them in their faith? Because that's what you talk about, what all they went through, and that's eye-opening. But a lot of people lose their faith. They drift away from the church, like you're talking about. You have it in the church, but can you look back? I mean, I'm new to this church, so I don't know. But can you look back? People that have been here a long time. Can you look back and see how many members you lost?
Well,
because afterwards they kind of drifted away from their faith. What can we do is to keep them strong in their faith?
Yes.
I can tell you, I've got a ton of clients who after, they may be Baptist, Methodist, whatever, but after the divorce, they start going to Church of the Highlands, okay? Church of the Highlands, and I've asked why you do that? Well, it's very difficult to walk into a church or into a classroom and sit by yourself. If you're used to having a spouse with you, and now you're sitting by yourself, you feel like you are sticking out like a sore thumb. And we as a church maybe need to recognize that and be way more accepting and friendly, and sit up with them and do whatever. But we all kind of have our place that we sit in the church. We're used to sitting there. Well, now these people have gone through a divorce. We might need to consider sitting in a different place with them or doing something, because the way Church of the Highlands gets these people, they go in, they turn the lights off, and they got the music going, and they got everything happening. And so you don't stand out like a sore thumb when you go there. So something, I mean, I don't want us cutting the lights off and striking up a rock band, but we need to do something to realize that these people feel weird. They feel different because they're not that couple that they used to be. So maybe we need to have a heightened awareness of that in our church. Maybe we need to make sure that we develop new ways of dealing with that person by themselves when they don't have their spouse there anymore. But I think that's a big thing. Yes, sir.
This would be a good class for the auditorium too. I thought. I'd get everybody, to hear it.
If I could say something,
Yes.
What you said is pretty much the point. When I went through my divorce, a lot of people didn't know how to treat me anymore because they saw me as a couple. So, first of all, the women didn't talk to me because they didn't want to be accused of talking to the single man now. So, and men aren't used to comforting guys. So, they didn't know what to do with me. So, they kind of just said, hey, to me in the morning. And, like you said, they would sit over there. And so we do feel like that thumb, like, where do I fit in now? Because, what do you say to someone who's been divorced? Personally, I say treat them like normal, like you used to. Still invite them to stuff, still take them out to stuff, still get involved with their lives. Because I don't know what to say, so I just won't say anything because I'm scared to say something wrong and hurt their feelings. What you're doing is you're ostracizing them. And then you push them away, basically. So they go to a new place where no one knows their history, and they can start all over again.
Also, you feel like that maybe these people that you've known and went to church with, maybe they might blame you. That it's your fault and you have those feelings.
That's right. It's something we need to be considering, something we need to wonder about and try to process and maybe come up with a better way, but we need to be aware of it. So, thank you. Anybody else got anything?